Andrew, it's always great to have an excuse to have you back on the show. And of course, you've got a new venture that is just about to get started, and we're excited about it and excited to be able to tell everybody else about it as well. But first off, welcome back to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You've done a lot of stuff over the course of your career as a public figure, an artist, whatever. I mean, you've more recently been doing a lot of graphic design, been writing a lot. Of course, you've got a band, Project 86, that most people know you for, and you've just done a lot of stuff. But more recently, you've decided to dip your toe into the wild west of podcasting. So how did this come about, first of all? Like, why podcasting?
Well, it's really simple. I felt really left out.
I hear that.
Because there's so many podcasts out there, I have to make that joke.
Yeah, of course.
I feel like I'm kind of late to the party in some senses, but it's not because this desire hasn't been on my heart for a while. It's been 4 or 5 years since I've been contemplating this, but it never had the one idea that I felt passionate about to run with, nor the vision for the entire scope of the thing until recently. Actually, I owe it all to our fans, really. I was doing a Facebook Live about a month ago, answering questions, talking about various topics, and a few people were like, man, you should really start a podcast. And I was like, yeah, I've had that idea in the past. I just haven't ever followed through with it because it's just hasn't been the right timing, or I haven't felt completely right about it. And then a couple of friends, after I finished the Facebook Live, hit me up and also pushed me on it and basically gave me some ideas in terms of just structuring it and talking about Patreon, which is what I want. That's a good transition for what I want to talk about today.
Sure. Fantastic. Now, first off, because I know people are going to be looking for this as soon as it drops, give us the title of the podcast.
It's called Pioneers Podcast, Finding Your Creative Voice.
Okay. Now, when you say it like that, it sounds rather DIY, self-helpish. How much of that is part of the podcast?
I would say it's a portion of it. Really, the artistic journey for me over the last 21 years has led me down a lot of paths, but it's primarily, or it was based in, my endeavors with Project 86. When the band first started, the biggest struggle that I had was finding finding our own sound. And for me personally, finding my own voice as an artist, as a lyricist, as a vocalist, my physical voice, etc. In other words, finding my own unique style. And I believe that we found that very early on in our career. And there were some specific things that we did, and that sort of launched everything else that I was going to do moving forward. Creatively. And I've repeated that process throughout, my other endeavors as well, whether it's graphic design or writing books or speaking or anything creative that I put my hands on. There's been a lot of things from, like I said, all that I mentioned in journalism and more. Really, the artistic process is one where, you're finding your own story to tell in the world and embracing your own unique background and experiences and perspectives. And so that's all tied into our identity as people. And there's a spiritual bent to that as well, because God is our creator. We call him our creator, but we don't really think about what that word means. It implies creativity. And it says, the Bible says that we're made in the image of God. So that means we all bear the attributes of his personality. If you take that one step further, it means that we're all creative people in one form or another. And music and visual art and, film, TV, all these things that we absorb that are creative media play such a huge role in our lives. I just felt like this was subject matter that was, broad enough that I could explore a wide variety of different topics and guests, bring it back to Project 86 for the Project 86 band, but also speak into people's lives in such a way that I'm helping them on a number of different levels. And for me, the primary motivation is taking everything that I've learned over the last 21 years and inspiring and empowering others to go on their own journeys.
Okay. Well, I've got a kind of a random question to follow that up with, since you kind of alluded to the idea of inspiring others to follow whatever their creative journey or outlet is and embrace that. What would you say is the thing for you that inspired you to get started all those years ago in project? What was the thing that kind of pushed you over that's kind of a cool thing I want to do that?
I've always been interested in music, and since I was a kid, I was a singer, or sang along to songs. I had a relative that recorded a demo for me, and so I had people around me that encouraged me to explore that a little bit. And
Okay.
I saw people who were trying to do it, as a career, and so I was around it. And then when I moved to Southern California, when I was in my teens, I started going to shows, and the first show that I went to was like a Tooth and Nail themed show way back when Tooth and Nail was starting in the early 90s in Southern California. And I saw bands like Plank Eye and Focused and some other bands that, just lit the fire under me, because at that time I was a new Christian and I felt like I had a lot I wanted to tell the world, and already had that sort of creative music passion. I just saw people on stage doing it, and I said, I want to do that. And I feel like I had something to say.
Very nice. I like that. That's cool. Because I wasn't sure if I had ever known that specific part of your story. I mean, I've heard a good bit of it, both from you and then also kind of other podcasts that at least have talked about Project 86, even if it wasn't you being interviewed, of people kind of giving various facets of kind of the canvas that makes up Project 86's history. But I didn't know that specific part about you. But that's cool. I like that. So now, what can people expect aside from being inspired by you and whoever else you might have on the show as a guest to kind of pursue creativity? What else should people expect from the Pioneers podcast?
I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm a fan of podcasting, and that's how I always approach everything that I do. And by the way, when I talk about the things that inspired me to start doing Project 86, people have this tendency to think that creatives are separate from non-creatives. And
Right.
It's just not true. The dream that I had was not unique. It might have been to do something unique at a unique time in music. But even then, I think people resonate with this idea that you have something that you want to tell the world through something creative. I can't tell you how many people I talk to who want to start a band, or who want to write a book, or do something else to put their voice out into the world. And getting back to your question, the vision for the podcast and what I want to do with this thing is inspired by my listening to podcasts and really taking massive notes over the last several years about what makes a good podcast. And I feel like what makes a good podcast are great stories, great guests, and meaningful content. And I plan to have all the above. I have a lot of guests already lined up. Ryan Clark from Demon Hunter, Leroy from War of Ages, Bruce from Living Sacrifice, Tobin from Flatfoot 56, and a list of about 30 others. Stories, I have a ton of stories that I've never told the world from my career in Project 86 primarily, but from all of my other endeavors as well, that I really feel like could inspire people, both from the perspective of what not to do, how to avoid drama, and also how to hone your vision for the things that you're trying to do in your life.
Right.
And then as far as meaningful content, I feel like it's important for me to instruct people on, how to do everything from writing songs to, doing crowdfunding, to marketing, to creating your own brand, to, designing a clothing line and launching it, to, starting a graphic design career. And, I have a lot of guests that will speak into things that I'm not an expert on as well. Cody Driggers, who's played bass in Project for years. He also played in The Wedding. He has a successful clothing line, and I want to have him on the podcast to talk about his motivation and what he wanted to say to the world and their vision and how they launched their brand. And so, this is for the entrepreneurial, creative spirit, this podcast, and I think there's a lot that people can glean from it.
Nice. Now, one thing that I always find interesting, especially for artists or people who have been kind of in the public eye to start a podcast, is I always wonder how they feel like the transition goes from being a guest like you are on my show right now to hosting other people and kind of taking that guest seat or that host seat over and kind of running the conversation and whatnot. And mind you, I'm not at all unaware that you have done a lot of public speaking as well. So it's not like this is out of character for you to not just be answering a bunch of questions. But how did you feel like that transition went for you?
Well, for me, this is something I've actually done in a different format. I had a blog that I was running for quite a while for the Tin Soldiers, and I had a lot of really cool guests on that
Okay.
blog, but it was all, typed. It was, something that you read, not something that you listen to. But the conversations that I posted were, summarizations and transcripts of recorded interviews, basically, that I did with other people, Dustin Kensrue from Thrice and Matt from August Burns Red, and Maddie from For Today, and so I got my feet wet, so to speak, in doing that blog with this format.
Okay. Nice. Very cool. Very cool. Aside from just getting it started, because I think sometimes for anything creative or new, even if it's not necessarily thought of as being creative, anything that's new always feels like the worst part and the hardest part is just getting going. I mean, it's hard to get, at least for me, it's hard to get over that mental hump of thinking about it and figuring out exactly how things are going to be as opposed to just getting it started. But aside from just getting started, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you've had thus far? I mean, this is kind of early stages, but what's been challenging for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Just honing in on the ideas, getting the title, getting sort of, being able to articulate what it is specifically that I want to do with this thing, what the goal I want to accomplish. Basically, the motivation here is everybody has a voice, in this world. Everybody has a voice in this world. And I want to encourage people to use their voices wisely. And that's actually my closing statement for the podcast for each episode. You have a voice, use it wisely. It's just empowering people, inspiring people, and giving people instruction on how to use their voice in a creative setting, but that can really be translated to a communication setting, because creativity can also be, extended to just the wordsmith realm, putting out words into the world. And that includes like social media and blogging. So everybody has a voice, and we live in a culture that, people want to express their voices. And so I feel like this touches every single person's life. And getting to the point where I can articulate to you was the hardest step. Now, the other hard step is getting it off the ground, from a fiscal perspective. And so I came upon Patreon, which is a really cool, unique crowdfunding platform, which has a vision of, people backing the creators that they love and putting their faith in them through a monthly contribution. And essentially that's how I'm getting this podcast off the ground.
Nice. Now, how has that been different for you as opposed to doing like Kickstarter or Indiegogo or Pledge Music or whatever other formats that you've used to raise funds for a project in the past?
It's similar in the sense that people are, pledging based upon faith, because I haven't produced a podcast yet. My pitch is once I get to 250 subscribers, I'm going to put the project into production, because enough people have voted and have enough funding to pay for the time for myself, pay for the time for the other people that I need to hire to do the production work, and just all the things and time that's going to go into making this thing a reality. And so, the challenge is just, I'm asking for people to give a little amount each month, and to commit to that as an act of faith to me. But it's awesome in the sense that once I get to the point where I get those 250 people and this becomes a reality, it's like I can count on that monthly, offering to me to put this out into the world. And there's just a sense of security in that I've never had in my life.
Right. Yeah. Because heaven knows the one thing that's can be a downside of doing anything artistic is rarely ever assured and consistent. Yeah.
And you are dependent upon, the people that love your music, the people that love your brand, the people that love whatever you are, whatever you're doing that you're putting out into the world, that people are consuming and buying and supporting you with. And so I'm totally reliant upon our fans to get this endeavor off the ground. And I'm putting faith in them. They have faith in me enough, at least 250 of them, to come on my Patreon page. And by the way, I'll plug it right now. If you just go to patreon.com and search Pioneers Podcast or my name, Andrew Schwab, you'll see it. And I'm asking, if you believe at all in my lyrics, in the work that I've done with Project 86, our music, our 10 albums over the years, the other music I put out in the world, Lemon 6 Echo, the books that I've written, and the other things that I've put out into the world. If you believe in me as an artist, I would love for you to kind of put your money where your mouth is just a little bit and express faith in me to help get this off the ground. Because this is by far, besides like starting a band, and I would even say it's even more so, the most ambitious thing I've ever done, because it's going to require a lot of time and effort. And I'm asking for faith from people to do something brand new that I've never done before. It's different than writing a book and just putting it up to sell.
Sure.
Because I just believe people are going to buy that book. You know what I mean? When I put it up.
Right.
And when I started the band, I didn't have as much to risk.
Yeah.
I was a lot younger. So this is a kind of a bold move on my part in a time where there's a lot of podcasts out there. I believe that I can do it right, and I can do it well, and I can put something out there that's going to enrich people's lives.
Nice. I like that. That's cool. Now, this is a question that I kind of debated whether or not I want to ask you, but I'm going to ask you anyway, because we can always get rid of it if we don't want to have it asked. But in addition to all the people who I know you've mentioned that are going to be guests already, is there any possibility at this point, do you think, of having any aside? I guess P.O.D would be one of them. Is there any chance of having other band members that are going to be on the podcast to chat about things?
Yeah, Josh Hagquist, who plays guitar for me and has played guitar for me since 2011 off and on. He's going to be coming on once in a while as a guest. He's also going to help me with production.
Okay, cool.
He's one specific person that will be coming on in various capacities. If you're asking about like the OG Project 86 members, I don't know if that will happen or not, just because we're not really in touch that much anymore. I wish those guys the best, and they're going down the road of their individual endeavors, but we haven't connected in so long.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's kind of an open-ended question. I mean, definitely I'm interested in any iteration of project. Of course, it's great. I mean, I know that there will be a lot of people who would be curious to have some of the OG members on, but at the same time, I think anybody is cool. I think that's always kind of interesting to have people who not only have like we went on a tour together, or we played some shows together, or we ran in the same circles, but also, those people who have a lot of back history that, there's a weird difference. It always feels like in between the people who kind of ran the same circles as opposed to those people who had to live in a van together for 3 years.
Totally.
So yeah. Well, that's cool, man. I'll be curious to see how all that works out. I know that's a challenge. Just speaking from my end, and I don't have anywhere near the clout that you do, but getting a guest on every week is always an interesting thing, because sometimes it'll be like I get 5 people who want to be on the show at the same time, and then other times I'll send out 10 emails and nobody returns them. So you just never know how those things are going to go, but I think you'll do just fine. Going back to the idea of kind of you as an artist, in addition to doing the podcast, is there any one facet of your artistic career that you have found the most challenging looking back on it, as far as just like the difficulty for you to kind of get into the mindset of doing that thing?
That's a good question. I can't say that, doing music versus writing books versus doing graphic design, one is more difficult than the other. They all pose their own unique challenges, and I don't know if I can put one above any other. But I would say that probably the biggest challenge that I face consistently is pushing ahead. And so I would say Project 86 has been, the biggest challenge has been, longevity, essentially, because each time that an album is put out into the world, I put painstaking effort into finding something new, a new twist on my voice or a new twist on the band's sound. And doing that, essentially reinventing yourself over and over and over again in your band, in such a way that it still sounds like the same band, but it still sounds fresh and new and not rehash, and still of the same quality, is a huge challenge. It's easy to do something, that you're passionate about for a short period of time, kind of like a rabbit sprinting, but finding longevity in my endeavors and finding that motivation day in, day out to keep doing what I'm doing is always the biggest challenge, because it requires me digging deep, getting in touch with myself, my emotions, my thoughts, and just, it's a ton of work. It's a ton of work.
Absolutely. Cool, man. Well, now, as we kind of discussed some of this a little bit before we got started recording, and I know the answer to this, but because I know that I will get comments if I don't, I have to ask, is there anything new on the horizon for Project 86 at this point?
Yeah. Well, we completed our 10th album campaign not too long ago. It was a massive endeavor. It was the 20th anniversary concept, basically, and tons of music, oh my gosh, I can't even go into how massive this campaign was, and the fans really responded well. I am in the process of plotting out the next record. I won't give any details on it just yet because I haven't figured it all out yet, but it will be another unique endeavor, I think. Okay. I have an idea for what I want to do or make it, and I think it's important for me to try something new each time and try to inspire the fans with something new each time. Last time around we did everything from becoming the 5th band member to songwriting sessions to all kinds of different things. So, there's a lot that goes into it. I put my heart and soul into everything that I do, and I try to do it passionately, or I don't do it at all. And I think that, at which point I'm going to say, probably by end of first quarter of 2019, I'll be announcing, the next project record.
Okay. Now, as a kind of a side note to that, since you brought up London 6 Echo, is there anything brewing with that, or do you kind of see that as kind of a one-off thing?
It's alive. It's just, other things have come before it.
Sure.
I've been busy doing graphic design, getting the podcast off the ground. Prior to that, it was, spending a lot of time just fulfilling all of our Pledge Music campaign, touring. So you can imagine that I have full days. There's always something I can be working on and then some. I always feel behind and like I'm never getting anything done because there's so much on my plate.
Right.
But there will be another Project 86 record. It will be coming next year. As far as London 6 Echo goes, I don't have a time frame on that. It's still open-ended. I'm hoping to circle back to it at some point.
Well, is there anything else that you want to throw out there, either about the podcast or any of your other endeavors that you're excited to share at this point?
Just regarding the Pioneers podcast, I need your help getting this thing off the ground. Visit my Patreon page, patreon.com. That's Patreon. And just search Pioneers Podcast or Andrew Schwab. Your monthly contribution, think of as an offering. If you have to sacrifice a couple Starbucks drinks, please do it because this will have lasting impact in people's lives. Everybody has a voice. You have a voice, and I want to encourage people to use it wisely no matter what you're doing to communicate to the world. This is something that I believe will benefit your life. Well,
before I let you go, I've asked you so many times about the most un-rock and roll thing about you because I just love knowing that. But I feel like I should give you a break from that one. But I did want to see if I could play a quick little game with you if you're up for it.
Sure.
One of the new things I've discovered is interesting is it always feels like, of course, everybody has moved at least mostly into the streaming music world. And of course, every streaming service, for whatever reason, seems like they attract a slightly different group of fans, even of the same band. But since it seems to be at least pretty consistently a number 2 service as opposed to the main one, I wanted to see if I could quiz you about what you think your top 6 songs for Project 86 are on Apple Music.
I really don't know. I'm going to guess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's all I'm really looking for.
You know the answer to this, right?
Yes, I do. We can just sit around and muse about it.
I'm going to say, do I have to say them in order?
No, but there's bonus. I mean, heaven knows you would get my undying respect if you got them in order. But I was even surprised a little bit at some of the ones that are in the top 6, much less the order. So, I mean, if you got them in order, that'd be great. But I'm not expecting that.
I'm going to say Fall Glass Ball, MHS, The Spy Hunter, Evil, A Chorus of Resistance. Gosh, I don't know after that.
Well, I will tell you thus far, you've only gotten 2.
I've only gotten 2?
Spy Hunter and Evil, A Chorus of Resistance are the only 2.
Oh my gosh. Okay, then they must be older ones.
A good bit of them are, yeah.
One-Armed Man?
Okay, yes.
Yeah, okay. Signed Theme?
Okay, yes.
Okay.
You're only missing 2 at this point.
Me Against Me.
Nope.
Did I say P.S.?
I don't know if you did or not, but that one's not on there either. Like I said, the last 2 are ones I was kind of surprised at.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. You have to tell me.
A word from our sponsors and
What?
put your lips to the TV.
Oh, that can't be right.
That was my thought too. I'm like, I like both of those songs, but I was going, what? No. I was like, where's Dear Ichabod? Oh my goodness. But yeah, I was a little surprised at that as well. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just that you have just some very big fans of that particular record that listen to Project 86 on Apple Music. I don't know, but I was a little shocked.
Yeah, that is really weird.
Oh man. As a matter of fact, here, let me see. Just for kicks and giggles, I still have it pulled up on my phone. So if you go into the top, there's 2 more listed. Fall Goliath Fall is actually number 8, and Me Against Me would be number 7. So you weren't far off, but still, I was a little surprised.
Yeah, that's super weird. Super weird.
Well, that coming from you makes my day. Not to say that you're super weird. That might have come out wrong. Oh, man, dude. I've enjoyed that, despite the fact that I agree with you. I think there is something a little hinky about that, but who knows? Maybe they reset it at the beginning of the month or something. And those are just the ones that have been played today. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything is possible. Well, dude, thank you so much for spending time. I always love having you on the show. You're always an interesting person to be able to talk to. And of course, I always love the disconnect to me, and that I love to get to witness in other people whenever they have heard an interview with you and have seen you live, just on how kind of calm and thoughtful you are in interviews and how intense you are on stage. And I love that about you. And I can't wait to hear the podcast myself. I think it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely.